In the village of Umune, there was a kind but tired woman named Ekema. She lived in a small hut with her son, Chimdi, who was her only joy. Ekema's husband had died during a storm, leaving her to care for Chimdi all by herself. Every day she worked very hard, but no matter how much she did, there was never enough food. Chimdi was growing weaker, and Ekema's heart broke every time she saw his hungry, sad eyes. Ekema woke up early each day before the sun rose. She carried heavy firewood, fetched water from the stream, and farmed in the dry, cracked soil. But even after all her work, the little food she grew wasn't enough to fill their bellies. The market in the village was no help either. Everything was so expensive that even one yam was more than she could buy. No matter how much she tried, it was never enough. Chimdi was a cheerful boy who loved to laugh and play with other children. But lately, he had grown quiet. His cheeks were no longer round, and he was too tired to run around. Ekema would sit by his side, stroking his hair, whispering, "Mama is trying, my son. We will be fine." But inside, Ekema was not sure if things would ever get better. She prayed and hoped, but her struggles never ended. One night, after a very hard day, Ekema sat outside her hut and looked up at the stars. The moon was full and bright, and the sky was quiet. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered, "I just need one day to rest, one day without pain, hunger, or sorrow." She did not know why she said it out aloud, but it felt like the stars were listening to her. She repeated her wish again, softly. Suddenly, the wind stopped blowing, and the air became very still. The night, which had been calm, now felt cold and strange. A shadow began to form at the edge of the forest near Ekema's hut. Ekema's heart raced as she stood. "Who is there?" she called out, her voice shaking. The shadow grew larger until it stood in front of her. It was a tall figure cloaked in black, with a voice as soft as the wind. "You called for me," the figure said. Ekema trembled but did not run. "Who are you?" she asked. "I am Death," the figure replied. Ekema gasped, stepping back, but Death did not move closer. "You wished for rest," it said, "and I have come to grant it." Ekema's fear turned into confusion. "Rest?" she asked. Death nodded. "You can borrow death for one day. You will sleep in peace, free from all pain and sorrow." Ekema hesitated. "Just one day?" she asked. "And I will wake up afterwards?" Death's hollow voice replied, "Yes, you will return after one day. But you must understand, death is not a game. If you borrow me too often, I may not give you your life back." Ekema thought about it and nodded. "I just need one day," she said. Death raised its shadowy hand and touched her forehead. The world around her grew dark and Ekema fell asleep. The next morning, Chimdi woke up and found his mother lying still on the floor. "Mama," he called out, shaking her gently. She did not move. Panic filled the little boy's heart. He ran out of the hut shouting, "Help! My mama is not waking up." Villagers rushed to Ekema's hut and saw her lifeless body. Some wept, others whispered prayers. "She has left us," one elder said sadly. They began preparing to bury her. As the villagers gathered to discuss the burial, the village's native doctor, Nwunye, arrived. He was a wise and respected man who understood things no one else could. He looked at Ekema's body and said, "Her spirit has not traveled far. Do not bury her yet. We must wait until tomorrow." The villagers were puzzled, but trusted Nwunye's wisdom. They left Ekema's body in her hut and prayed for her soul. The next morning, just as the sun rose, Ekema gasped for air and opened her eyes. Her heart was beating again, and she was alive. Villagers screamed and ran to her hut, amazed. "She's back!" they shouted. Chimdi hugged his mother tightly, crying tears of joy. Ekema smiled and whispered, "I'm here, my son." The villagers called it a miracle, but Ekema knew the truth. She had borrowed death and returned to life. At first, Ekema felt relieved. The rest she had experienced in death was peaceful and calming. She felt no hunger, no pain, no sorrow. But when the hard days returned, days of hunger and exhaustion, Ekema remembered the quiet peace of death. One night she made the same wish. "Death, I call you again. Let me borrow your peace for a few days." Death appeared and reminded her, "Do not borrow me too often." Ekema agreed. This time, Ekema borrowed Death for 3 days. Before she closed her eyes, she left Chimdi with her neighbors, telling them she needed to visit a faraway farm. Deep in the forest, she lay down on soft grass and let her soul leave her body. For 3 days she rested in peace, free from all the pain. On the fourth morning, her soul returned and she woke up feeling light and calm. After returning to life, Ekema resumed her struggles. She hugged Chimdi tightly, hoping he would never know the truth about where she had gone. The villagers believed her story about visiting another farm, but some whispered that there was something unusual about her. Ekema didn't care. The peace she had found in borrowing death became her secret escape. Whenever life became too hard, she would wander into the forest and borrow death again, staying far away for a few days, then returning to life. It felt like her only way to survive. As time passed, Ekema grew more comfortable borrowing debt. At first, she only asked for a single day, then 3 days, and then a week. Each time she wandered deeper into the forest, far away from the village. She feared that one day the villagers might try to bury her before she could return. In the forest, no one would find her body, and she would lie still, waiting for her soul to come back. It felt safe, even though she knew it was dangerous. Chimdi grew worried about his mother's frequent disappearances. "Mama, why do you always go away?" he asked one evening. Ekema stroked his hair and said softly, "I go to find food for us, my son. Don't worry, Mama always comes back." But Chimdi wasn't convinced. He often cried when she left, afraid she wouldn't return. Ekema tried to ignore his tears, but her heart ached. She told herself it was for the best. Borrowing debt gave her the strength to keep going for him. One day, Ekema borrowed debt for 2 whole weeks. Life had become unbearable and she longed for a peaceful rest she had come to cherish. She walked into the forest deeper than ever before and found a quiet spot beneath an ancient tree. Lying down, she whispered, "Death, I am ready." The cold touch of death took her once again, and her soul drifted into silence. The villagers noticed her absence, but they assumed she had traveled far to find work. While Ekema's body lay still in the forest, Chimdi waited at home, watching the door every day. Mama will come back, he told himself, even as his hope began to fade. Neighbors brought him food and comforted him, but Chimdi couldn't stop blaming himself. "Mama works too hard because of me," he thought. "She must be so tired." He didn't know where she had gone, but he felt deep down in his heart that something wasn't right. 2 weeks passed and Ekema did not return. The villagers grew worried. They formed a search party and began looking for her. "She must be lost," they said, "or maybe something terrible has happened." Chimdi begged to join the search, but the elders told him to stay behind. "We will find your mother," they promised. The villagers combed the forest, calling her name. After hours of searching, one of them found her body lying beneath a tree. "Ekema!" the man shouted. The villagers rushed to the spot and gasped as they saw her. She looked peaceful, as if she were sleeping, but she was cold and still. They tried to wake her, but nothing worked. Someone suggested taking her body back to the native doctor Umuye. The villagers carried Ekema's body carefully. their hearts heavy with worry. Chimdi ran to them as they entered the village, crying out for his mother. Nwoye examined Ekema's body, his face dark with concern. He placed his hand on her forehead and closed his eyes, listening to the whispers of the spirit world. After a long silence, he shook his head. Her spirit is gone, he said gravely. Death has taken her for good. The villagers gasped and Chimdi collapsed into tears. Nwoye explained, Ekema has been borrowing death for a long time. This time, Death refused to give her back. The villagers were shocked by Nwoye's words. Borrowing debt? What does that mean? They asked. Nwoye explained how Ekema had struck a deal with death to escape her pain. She wanted peace, but in doing so, she left behind her responsibilities. Death warned her, but she kept returning until her time finally ran out. The villagers were silent, their hearts heavy with grief. They couldn't believe Ekema had been hiding such a secret. Chimdi blamed himself for his mother's choices. It's my fault, he sobbed. She was tired because of me. Mama Nkechi, a kind woman in the village, held him close and said, No, my child, your mother loved you so much that she tried to carry the weight of the world. But this was not your fault. She made her own choices. Chimdi listened, but the guilt stayed with him, a shadow he couldn't escape. Ekema's body was buried the next day under a tall tree near the village. The villagers gathered around her grave, their faces full of sorrow. Nwoye spoke to them, his voice firm but kind. Let Ekema's story be a lesson to us all. Life is full of struggles, but death is not the answer. When we are alive, we have hope. Things can change in just one day. But in death, there are no second chances, he said. The villagers nodded, taking Nwoye's words to heart. They realized how much they had taken life for granted. Many of them had seen their own struggles as too much to bear. But Ekema's story reminded them to be grateful for the gift of life. They promised to support one another, helping those who were struggling so that no one else would feel the need to borrow debt. After Ekema's burial, the villagers began telling her story to everyone, especially to the children. They wanted to teach them that even though life could be hard, there was always a chance of things to get better when you're alive. You can fight, you can hope, and you can dream, they would say. But in death, everything stops. There is no more hope. The children listened closely, and even the adults reflected on the wisdom in those words. Ekema's story became a lesson for generations. Chimdi was taken in by Mama Nkechi, a kind and generous woman who had always cared for others in the village. She cooked for him, told him stories, and tried her best to make him smile. But no matter how much she loved him, Chimdi could not stop missing his mother. Every night he cried quietly, wondering if he had caused her to borrow debt so often. Mama left because of me, he whispered to himself. Mama Nkechi noticed Chimdi's sadness and decided to talk to him one evening. She sat beside him as he stared at the moon. Chimdi, your mother loved you more than anything, she said softly. She tried to rest because life was hard, but that was never your fault. You were the reason she kept coming back. She fought to stay alive for you. Chimdi wiped his tears and nodded, though the guilt still lingered in his heart. Life slowly moved on in the village. The people worked together to make sure no one was left struggling like Ekema had been. If a family was short on food, the others shared what they had. If someone was overwhelmed, the villagers came to help. They realized that they were stronger together and that kindness and community could ease even the hardest burdens. They didn't want anyone to feel like they had no choice but to escape. Chimde grew stronger with Mama Nkechi's care, but he still visited his mother's grave every week. He brought flowers he picked from the fields and sat by the tree, talking to her as if she could hear him. Mama, I'm doing well, he would say. Mama Nkechi is kind, but I miss you. I will make you proud. The villagers often saw him there and felt both sorrow and pride, for the boy who carried his mother's love in his heart. One day, Uwonye gathered the children of the village under the same tree where Ekema was buried. He told them her story in simple words. Ekema borrowed death to escape her pain, but it came back at a price. She didn't realize that even in the hardest times, life has hope. But if she had asked for help or waited just a little longer, maybe things would have turned around for her. The children listened carefully, their eyes wide with wonder. Do you know what Ekema's story teaches us? Wonye asked. A small boy raised his hand and said, that we shouldn't give up. Nwoye smiled and nodded. Yes, that's right. Life is hard sometimes, but when we help each other, the pain becomes lighter. And remember, even if today is bad, tomorrow could be the day your life changes for the better. Never forget the gift of being alive. The children clapped and cheered, taking the lesson to heart. As years passed, Ekema's story became a part of the village's history. Elders told it during gatherings, and it was written down in books for the next generation to read. People who faced tough times often thought of her and found strength to keep going. Her story reminded them to appreciate the little joys in life, like a child's laughter, the beauty of a sunrise, or the kindness of a neighbor. Chimdi grew into a strong and kind young man, known for his wisdom and generosity. Though he still missed his mother deeply, he carried her memory with pride. He worked hard to help others, offering food to those in need and comforting those who were sad. Mama taught me to love, even in the hardest times, he would say. I will live the way she would have wanted me to. The villagers admired him and saw a Kema spirit in his actions. One day, Chimdi decided to build a small shrine near his mother's grave. It was a place where people would come to remember her and reflect on the value of life. He carved her name into a stone and placed flowers around it. This is for Mama, he said. The villagers began visiting the shrine often, leaving small offerings of fruits or lighting candles as they prayed for strength and hope in their own lives. The story of Ekema's deal with death even spread to neighboring villages. Travelers came to Umune to hear about the woman who had borrowed death and to see the shrine her son had built. People marveled at how much she had loved her child and how her story had changed the way the village lived. She taught us to appreciate life, the villagers would say. No matter how hard things are, there is always hope. Nwoye often stood by the shrine speaking to visitors about the importance of unity and perseverance. Ekema made a mistake, but we all learned from it, he would tell them. She showed us that running from problems does not solve them. We must face life with courage and lean on one another when things get tough. Visitors nodded thoughtfully, touched by wisdom of Ekema's story and the love she had for her son. Mama Nkechi grew older and Chimdi cared for her as she had cared for him. You're a blessing, Chimdi, she often told him. Your mother would be so proud of the man you've become. Chimdi smiled and said, I owe everything to you and Mama. I will always try to honor her memory by helping others, just like she did. Mama Nkechi's heart was full of pride for the boy she had raised as her own. Over time, the village of Umune became known as a place where no one was left to struggle alone. If someone needed food, shelter, or comfort, the villagers came together to provide it. They built a strong community where kindness was more valuable than gold. Ekema's story had changed them forever, teaching them that even the hardest times could be faced with love and unity. Though Chimdi always carried a sadness in his heart, he also carried hope. He often told children about his mother's strength and reminded them to cherish life. No matter how hard things get, you can find a way through it, he would say. Don't borrow debt, borrow courage, borrow hope, and lean on the people who would care for you. The children listened and promised to live bravely, inspired by Ekema's story and Chimdi's example. Ekema's story became a legend and her name was spoken with respect throughout the land. Her son's shrine remained a place of hope and remembrance for generations. The villagers never forgot the lesson she taught them. Life is a gift, full of struggles and blessings, and no matter how hard it gets, being alive means having a chance to change things. Ekema's love, sacrifice, and story lived on, reminding people to cherish every moment of life.